The DOJ unveiled a late 2019 indictment tied to two Russian nationals who, according to the newly revealed allegations and accompanying press release, were behind the fall of Mt. Gox, arguably the first major Bitcoin exchange, which collapsed back in 2014 following revelations that it had been drained of most of its customer funds. The indictment itself is honestly pretty fascinating, laying out information that the U.S. government has apparently had for more than 3 years, alleging Alexandr Verner and Alexey Bilyuchenko compromised the exchange all the way back in 2011. And with the assistance of an unnamed New York-based exchange, allegedly laundered hundreds of thousands of those BTC over the course of a couple of years. It's honestly a pretty fascinating turn of events for a number of reasons. Zach, let's go to you first. What's your take on this one?
Yeah, this is certainly like, the skeletons in the closet of the crypto recent history, right? This is something that is fascinating to see unfold, right? Alexandr Vinnik, who is also associated with BTCE, the other named exchange in this piece, he's been languishing in prison for a number of years. So to hear some of his alleged co-conspirators come out in this revelation is fascinating, right? Sort of the history of Mt. Gox certainly has a bit more detail than was previously established. And so now we see sort of how this all worked in what was really a foundational moment for the crypto industry, the nascent crypto industry at the time. The fact that like Mt. Gox creditors are still not all the way whole, this has drawn on for about a decade at this point and is still going on, is a sort of a poignant reminder that some of the stuff that we've seen implode in the last year may also take similarly long to resolve itself. So these major blowups, these major incidents where money is outright stolen or pilfered or exploited or lost, those are painful moments and they have long-standing repercussions. So really for me, like this is sort of the historical picture of Mt. Gox sort of coming into a bit more sharper focus and understanding where all these funds went, and that web that was sort of created by way of this sort of foundational exploit in the crypto story. So interesting to see BTCE named, interesting to have the ghost of Alexandr Vinnik kind of pop back up into the limelight. It's fascinating to hear some of these previously basically undisclosed details around what had happened with Mt. Gox. Will, what do you think?
Yeah, the BTCE thing is definitely interesting and wasn't really around. I think I was in middle school during this time, so I don't have a lot of insights there. Sorry, my bad. Adam might be able to tell you. Just saying, like, my history corner is only so deep. My mind wasn't quite functioning yet then. But it is interesting to see that pop back up. And I think that kind of tells you about the long tail effects of a lot of these Bitcoin things, right? It's like these Bitcoins have history. There's 650,000 Bitcoins involved with this. And there's only supposed to be 21 million Bitcoins ever. So you have a sizable proportion of all of Bitcoin's supply locked up in this whole debate. And there can be lots of different things that go on from that. What if these coins are locked up forever with the government? What if they're sold off? Does that impact the price of Bitcoin? Are they going to actively track these Bitcoins as they're moving through the different systems? Like, there's lots of ways to think about this when it comes to a digital currency. Setting that aside and going to the Mt. Gox stuff, which is a little bit more important, I think it does give you like a little bit more of a sympathetic take for Mark Karpeles. I don't know if Adam will agree with that, but the fact that we do have some sort of resolution on what occurred here, a target attack, they were able to siphon funds and boot up like this dark web account, this dark web trading platform, like makes me feel a little bit better about the whole situation. Also, along with this is the fact that you think about how small this industry was at the time, that it was an exchange, basically hacking exchange to boot itself up is like an interesting tidbit here, right? Like there was not that many people involved in the market back then. And this is the kind of people who were involved in it, right? Pretty nefarious or completely clumsy in the case of Karpeles. But Adam, I'll throw it up to you. Since you're around during this time, you have a more informed opinion than me.
I was definitely around. It's fascinating to me that the attack started all the way back in 2011. Again, like 2011 was when I sort of started my journey into cryptocurrency, but I didn't dox myself until the spring of 2013. And then Gox would go on to have problems over the course of that spring and summer, which I was very much kind of, aware of at the time. And then the next year it would actually explode. There are a couple of different things that are fascinating here. The first is that I think you're right, Will. Like the question of, was Mark Karpeles a bad actor or was he a bumbling actor, I think is answered if these allegations prove true, which is that bumbling. He always looked like that, but it's kind of sometimes hard to tell because it's easier to fake bumbling than it is to fake evil sometimes. So I think another thing that's really fascinating to me about this is the government has had this since 2019. This indictment was filed as a sealed indictment on December 30th of 2019. So we're talking about like 3 years ago that they've known this and that the information that we're getting today is this. So I'm kind of wondering, what was the catalyst to actually release this information today? And how does it fit into, again, the kind of broader narrative about what very much seems like an attack against the kind of credibility and infrastructure of cryptocurrency in the United States? I don't know if there was a Freedom of Information Act or something that prompted this. I would be very curious to understand what the rationale was for releasing this today of all days. Back to you, Will.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. Why did they not release this like 3 years ago? Like, I guess the court system.
Saving it for a rainy day?
We should ask Jen. She's our legal expert on the show. Jen, why did they steal this for 4 years?
It does seem awfully curious that they would release it this week. I guess my view on this is a little bit broader. I don't know why they would have released this week and sit on it for all these years. But I think that this is just another story that checks the box that we don't need stronger regulation. We don't need different departments of law enforcement to figure out what's going on. I think we hear the narrative so often that, to correct the wrongs of the past, we need new law enforcement. We need new regulations, and that's not the case. This was solved in 2019. A crime is a crime, and this story just kind of continues to solidify that message for me. And I think it's so important to vocalize that. So I have no idea why they're sitting on it since 2019. I'm sorry, I failed you again as legal expert on the hash.
That was good. That was good stuff.
One more thought here. So as it relates to like the question of like what happens to the Bitcoin, and Will, you were saying like, is the government going to try, like, what are they going to track them? What are they going to do with them? One of the challenges that's really poorly understood out there is that you actually can't really track Bitcoin very effectively. What you can do is you can taint Bitcoin. So you can say, this pile of Bitcoin that I'm tracking merged with this pile of Bitcoin, and then that's split into 2 or 3 different things, right? Or however many things. But there's no like granular, like this Bitcoin went here, this Bitcoin went here. They're all mushed together and then split apart in ways that sort of obfuscate that. So when you look at something like Chainalysis and they're doing tracking, they're basically doing address to address tracking, or they're doing what's called taint analysis, where they see, all right, what Bitcoin were touched by this stuff. But it's something where one Bitcoin could potentially taint thousands, hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin. And so again, I know I'm going down a rabbit hole here. What's next?
It's a good rabbit hole.
Okay.
Please stop saying. Please stop saying taint, sir.